everyone, it's Dave here. Sorry it's been too long since my last video. Hopefully I'll be able to make up for that moving forward and make a few more regular ones this week. Today we're talking a little bit about my portfolio, the latest moves I've made, RKLB stock obviously, as well as a few others. And I think overall I can sum up how my portfolio has been performing over the past couple months like this.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
Yeah, I just can't catch a break with the Tesla. I was thinking maybe the big investor day around autonomy they had just recently might move the stock up. No such luck, so we're still in the, below 220 here. But really, I can't complain because overall, despite Tesla and Planet Labs, the portfolio is performing great. If you're new here, please do consider hitting subscribe by the end of this video. It'd be very much appreciated. And if you're not new here, thank you for continuing to watch. Okay, with that out of the way, let's talk investing. Alrighty, so starting off with my overall portfolio, we can see the 3-month chart here has a performance of 18.56%, which is pretty great overall, but it's quite a bull market right now, so I'm not going to claim I'm a genius or anything like that. Still, definitely enjoying this run. I'm sure a lot of you out there have had even better returns than me if you're more risk on. We have been seeing quite a rotation into more risk on assets, and I still do like to hold some of those safer index funds as well. And now, before we go into some of the more recent trades I've made, I feel like I'm just gonna have to address this because I get these comments a lot, more so on X or Twitter than here even. But a lot of people tell me, it's funny actually, because I used to get called dumb by people saying that RKLB was a big risk and I shouldn't be buying it. Nowadays, I seem to be getting called dumb because I buy anything that's not RKLB. So funny how it switches. I'm getting attacked on both sides, I guess. But just to be clear, this is my current space portfolio. RKLB, by far, not even close, the biggest position, and all the other ones have sort of been dipping my toe in for interest's sake or for fun. So RKLB right now, my market value, $171,500 on the main shares. Of course, I bought those for $66,000, so quite a good return there. The call option has now pretty much achieved a 6x during that time. So if you are interested in options and how it works, well, it's a lot more risky because if the stock doesn't achieve a certain target, then the option will go to zero, but you can get bigger returns as well. So the call option has been pretty much a 6x, while as the stock has not even hit a 3x yet. That just kind of goes to show the potential power of the options, but also the volatility and risk that comes with it. But the point I'm making here is, look, Redwire, my market value is under $3,000. Planet Labs market value under $1,500. And then Intuitive Machines, aka LUNR, market value probably $3,000-ish. I'll talk a little bit about this call option trade a little later. But it's all pennies compared to RKLB, and that's not going to change. So yes, I've been buying some other companies lately. No, I am not turning my back on RKLB, and I continue to be a big fan of the company and not planning to sell a share. But let's talk a little bit about what I have been doing. So I bought some Redwire recently, and if you want to get the most up-to-date information when I place trades, well, you can follow me on Twitter/X, because I generally post at least about space stocks pretty much immediately. And you can see here back on October 14th, I did say that I finally decided to pull the trigger on buying some Redwire stock, a company I've been watching for a while and always wanted shares but never pulled the trigger, and that was despite the company doing well. There were some reasons why I thought it could still be a good buy despite being near 62-week highs, something I usually try to avoid, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I bought about $2,350 worth of stock, and I've done pretty well on that so far. As I showed previously, we're now up to $2,700. So Let's compare a little bit Rocket Lab and Redwire, and I'm not trying to say here Redwire is better than Rocket Lab. I'm just trying to say it's okay to have both in your portfolio. So don't get mad at me for that. But Redwire, let's look at their annual revenue growth over the past several years compared to Rocket Lab. Both companies growing very rapidly, both space companies as well. So revenue growth from 2023 to 2022, we had 51% for Redwire, 15% for Rocket Lab. So Rocket Lab loses that year. Previous year, 2022, only 16% for Redwire and 238 for Rocket Lab. Rocket Lab wins that year. Then Redwire, of course, with the 209% growth. Rocket Lab only looking at 77%, and Redwire the year before that as well grew 134%. So Redwire is in the same ballpark as Rocket Lab when it comes to fast growing revenues. That's the big takeaway from this. It should be pretty clear here. In fact, over these years, Redwire's growth rate outperforming Rocket Lab's, although Rocket Lab's still absolutely amazing as well. Both companies growing very well. So just looking at this quickly in chart form, sorry, the words are a little bit blurry, but Rocket Lab is the blue and Redwire is the red. And this is how they've been growing by quarter. And it's pretty comparable, right? Like you can't say that they're not in the same ballpark. Yes, in the end of the day right now, Rocket Lab has pulled ahead. Both companies, though, in the same ballpark here. Price to sales now, this is where things get a little bit interesting. This is just one way of valuing a company. It's not the only way, but for companies that are not yet profitable, we don't have as many options. So Rocket Lab price to sales ratio for 2023 Q4 was about 6.3. That's forward price to sales, so looking forward what earnings are expected in the following year. And then forward price to sales for Q2 of 2024, now up to 11.46%. So getting up there on a price to sales basis in terms of how expensive things are looking. Redwire price to sales 2023 forward looking a measly 0.6%, very cheap. I generally consider anything below 1 an amazing deal. Now forward price to sales after the run that Redwire has had, still below 2, so pretty decent overall and certainly a lot lower than 11.5. And that's one reason some people could argue that Redwire looks cheaper than Rocket Lab. Again, not trying to make that argument here fully, and I'm just trying to say I'm happy owning both. Price to sales, Redwire versus Rocket Lab in the blue, Redwire in the red. Consistently, Redwire way down below Rocket Lab for price to sales, and there are some good reasons why Rocket Lab deserves to command a premium. Talk about that a little bit later on. I think Launch always commands a premium. They have a really great vision with end-to-end. They are a bigger company. We'll go on about that later. Again, this is just one metric, and there's often a reason why companies do command a higher price-to-sales ratio. By the way, guys, I did just want to quickly stop and share with you a website that I've been using quite regularly. I actually used it to do a lot of the research for this video. Saves me a ton of time. It's called FinChat, and it's basically bringing all the power of AI to your stock investing research. You can just type in what you want to know, and it'll give you all sorts of information that would take way longer to dig up and chart out on your own. For instance, here I'm just going to type in, show me a chart of Rocket Lab's revenue growth. And boom, here we have all the data showing annual revenue growth. We have last 12 months revenue data, quarterly revenue data, and it even pumps out a chart here showing revenues broken out by segment. We have launch services versus space systems. So easy. Here I've told it to show me Rocket Lab's latest earnings call presentation. We have some of the highlights up above, and down below we have an embedded PDF with the full presentation that I can scroll through to find the data I'm looking for. Really made research so much easier for me, and I wouldn't shout it out if I didn't really use it myself. So my referral link to FinChat, if you're interested, is finchat.io/via David, or I'll include that link in the description down below. Now let's continue with the video. Now, cash balances, this one firmly in Rocket Lab's favor, and this has actually been the main reason why I didn't invest in Redwire earlier, is I was quite uncomfortable seeing such a low cash balance on the books on their balance sheet. Checking out this chart, well, Rocket Lab, yes, they've been steadily spending as they try to get Neutron going online, jump up when they raised recently, and it should be even higher if you count short-term investments, which isn't shown here. But yeah, Rocket Lab consistently has way more money in the bank than Redwire, which does make me feel a little bit better about the company and its margin of safety if something were to go wrong. On the other hand, Redwire, seems to be pretty comfortable operating very close to the line, like 20 million in the bank, 10 million, 30 million, that kind of range. But I will say I'm getting a little bit more comfortable with this because they've been doing it consistently and haven't really had a disaster yet, and they seem to just want to put as much money as they can into future growth because while it's great to feel safe having a big cash balance, that cash is not being put to use while it's in the bank. So Redwire seems to want to put to use every cent they can while still not going out of business. The other thing that makes me a little bit more comfortable with Redwire lately is the adjusted EBITDA being positive in Q2 2024, as they really aren't burning as much money as Rocket Lab is. Although the net income still very much in the negative, but if you back out things like stock-based compensation and some others, which doesn't actually result in cash being burned on the balance sheet, although it is a concern, yeah, they aren't really burning as much money, and nice to see a positive adjusted EBITDA number for them, something that Rocket Lab is probably still, 4 quarters, 5 quarters away from, something like that. The other thing is, despite this getting closer to breaking even, they're still growing quite quickly. They submitted just basically a shit ton of bids in the past year to $1.9 billion in bids for new contracts and new work. Massive amount of bids submitted in 2024. So you can maybe expect they get, a certain percentage of that as actual contracts, and can expect therefore the backlog to grow pretty significantly, and eventually that backlog does turn into revenue. So a good sign for revenue growth in the future. And below here, contracted backlog detail has grown year over year, 30%, which is also pretty good. So signs of continued growth ahead for Redwire as well. Another reason why I'm okay owning this stock. Now, why, if Redwire seems cheaper than Rocket Lab, am I not selling a share of Rocket Lab? Why am I continuing to hold? Well, this tweet actually by Amit really spoke to me the other day when I saw it. So I figured I'd just kind of share this thought with you guys. Back in September 2020, two CNBC analysts had a bet. One said that in a year, Intel would outperform NVIDIA. A year later, NVIDIA was up 77%. Intel was only up 7%. And what the person said is that I don't disagree that valuation doesn't matter, but honestly, if it were that easy to look at EV to EBITDA or price to earnings ratios or price to sales ratios, I'm adding that bit myself, everybody would be rich. What's required, especially in technology, and maybe more so than any other sector, is an imagination. There's all these guys walking around Wall Street and they're like, oh, I'm a numbers guy. And sure, that's great. But every number you can locate, I can find too, and anyone else can find with a Google search. That's no edge. Anyone could see at the start of the bet that Intel was cheaper than NVIDIA on every metric. But what was required was imagination and creativity. Many of the Wall Street folks don't have that. So very interesting lesson here. Intel was looking so much cheaper than NVIDIA in so many ways, and yet NVIDIA did outperform massively because there was that vision, the long-term growth strategy, the plan, talking about all the processing for AI, for Bitcoin, for all this massive demand. And really, they've grown a massive moat and have become one of the biggest companies in the world. I own shares in NVIDIA too, by the way, and they're just a killer company to own. So it doesn't always come down to just looking at a price to sales ratio, a price to earnings ratio, what is appearing cheaper by certain metrics. Rocket Lab, I believe in the vision, the imagination, the end-to-end vision, the advantage that will come with having their own medium launch vehicle. I love the company. I think the management is top class, and I think they will do very well in the long run. That's why I'm not selling. But on the other hand, you know what? Redwire looks pretty cheap, so I don't think there's anything wrong with adding some shares of Redwire when my Rocket Lab has almost had a triple lately. Continuing to hold Redwire and Rocket Lab for now, and Rocket Lab I'll be watching closely to see when I think is a good time to add more shares. Now, talking about a new short-term gamble, the ones that I tell you guys not to do, but I do myself because they're very risky and I just like to do it for fun, for small amounts of money. I did buy another call option on Intuitive Machines because I think there are some upcoming catalysts that look interesting to me, and I think Intuitive Machines is an interesting company, although, you know, the cash situation still might need addressing at some point in the future. They've overall impressed me, and the stock has done quite well. So I'm looking for some new contracts potentially to give them a quick bump in the next couple months. This options trade expires end of December, and you know, another one I can tell you about how this trade goes in the future. But Intuitive Machines is one I think you shouldn't sleep on and is worth more research as well if you're not as familiar with the company. So back to Rocket Lab. I know I have a lot of Rocket Lab fans on this channel, and it's the reason a lot of people do watch. What's my plan there? Well, my plan kind of got destroyed recently, actually, and it's weird to complain about this, but I had this plan in place for quite a while now. You know, I was paying for a wedding coming up, and I was thinking, okay, this will time out pretty well. The wedding will be behind me. I'll have less things to worry about spending, and around this time when I get, you know, less busy, I can really do some hardcore research, buy extremely heavy on the leaps or long expiry call options, and try to have a really big win on my Rocket Lab shares. So my wedding was, if you look down at the chart below, end of September, and then I had a 2-week honeymoon. So what do you know, when I come back looking to execute my plan, the stock's already pretty much doubled and then continued to go up from there. So pretty frustrating. I didn't end up going through with it because the time that I really wanted to, it had already gone so high up, and I continue to love the company, going to continue to hold it, won't sell, and watch for a pullback. If there is one, then I will be sure to add more shares. I think what this comes down to is I underestimated just how big the macro environment was, and the fact that these rate cuts were coming in really moved what are considered riskier, unprofitable tech stocks in an outsized way. Rocket Lab has certainly benefited from that, among other reasons, and just didn't expect the move to happen quite so quick. I thought I had a little bit more time to add even more heavy, although I do still have a good number of Rocket Lab shares, and it's something I will continue to look for opportunities in the future. Let me know what you guys are doing in terms of Rocket Lab, in terms of Redwire, Intuitive Machines, or any other space stock. I'd love to hear about it down below. By the way, let's keep in mind, everyone looks like a genius in a bull market, so let's not start thinking we're the next coming of Warren Buffett, and stay humble out there, continue to do your research, and don't get carried away with margin or, you know, things that can get you into trouble over the long run. Just a reminder, I like to give myself, as well as anyone who might be watching, when we have these great runs, and try to stay down to earth. So that's what I've been doing lately. Great run for the stock portfolio, great run for Rocket Lab, as well as a lot of other space companies. I've added some Redwire, could potentially continue adding more if I get the funds available. As well as made another options play with Intuitive Machines, and could potentially add some more shares there at some point down the line. But really do deserve a full video diving into the valuation of intuitive machines. And hope you guys found this interesting. Let me know what you're doing, as I said, down below. I hope you guys have a great day and a great rest of the week. If you haven't subscribed, please hit that button. It helps out so much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.